Rachael Ray is letting everyone know how she is doing after a fire spread through her home. She just posted 3 words on social media: safe and sound.
It began like any ordinary segment. Rachael Ray, effervescent as ever, standing behind the familiar kitchen island, her hands swiftly moving from pot to pan, seasoning and stirring while chatting with her audience like old friends. Her charisma, always the central ingredient in her brand, radiated with an ease that made viewers feel at home. Yet behind the glow of the studio lights and the warmth of her tone, something darker had already begun to take root. The woman who had for years embodied comfort, domestic simplicity, and everyday joy was on the brink of a personal tragedy that would shatter the world she had so lovingly constructed for millions of fans. What followed was not just a moment of hardship. It was a tragedy that peeled back the layers of fame, exposing raw humanity beneath the polished surface. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. Rachael Ray's journey to household name status was built on hustle, grit, and a rare kind of relatability. Unlike the enigmatic allure of many culinary figures, Ray's appeal lay in her accessibility. She wasn't a Michelin-starred chef, nor did she claim to be. Her charm came from being someone the average person could identify with. A woman making 30-minute meals in real time, without fancy tools or gourmet ingredients. The set of her shows wasn't so much a stage as it was a mirror for every kitchen across America. That connection, once unbreakable, made the eventual heartbreak all the more potent. For someone who had offered comfort food and solace to so many, it was wrenching to witness her face the unraveling of her own stability. The tragedy didn't come in the form of one singular, cinematic moment, but rather a cascading series of personal losses, terrifying events, and professional strains that together formed an unbearable emotional storm. The catalyst, as with many turning points in life, was something completely out of her control: a fire, a real consuming blaze that took more than just material possessions. The fire that tore through Rachael Ray's home in upstate New York wasn't simply a physical destruction of property, it was a symbolic evisceration of everything she had poured into building a life that was equal parts private sanctuary and public inspiration. The house itself wasn't just any house. It was the physical manifestation of everything Ray had worked toward over decades. A place of comfort, designed with love, built with intention. It was where she tested recipes before sharing them with the world, where she and her husband John found refuge from the glare of television lights, where her dog, a constant companion and visible presence in her life, had a special place in the sun-drenched kitchen. Every corner of that home held meaning, and in a matter of hours it was reduced to charred wood and ash. The heartbreak wasn't confined to what was lost, but to the suddenness and violence of the loss, to the way something so warm and stable could be ripped away without warning. But the fire, devastating as it was, wasn't the only trial she was facing. It arrived during a time when the entire world was already grappling with uncertainty and grief. The COVID-19 pandemic had upended the rhythms of everyday life, and for Ray it meant a complete transformation of how she worked, lived, and connected with the world. Like so many others, she was isolated, broadcasting from home, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy while everything around her changed. The weight of the global crisis only magnified the personal ones. Her show, once a lively platform filled with laughter and guests, was now a digital window into her kitchen, with all the vulnerability that entailed. What made this tragedy resonate so deeply was how human it was. Ray wasn't a distant celebrity removed from the public's experience. She was someone viewers grew up with. Someone they trusted to guide them through everything from weeknight meals to emotional recovery. So when tragedy struck her, it felt intimate. The fire, the isolation, the subsequent emotional strain, these were wounds that the public felt alongside her. She didn't disappear or retreat into silence. Instead, she remained present, not because she wanted to share her pain, but because she didn't know any other way to be. Her very brand was built on openness, and even in devastation, she upheld it. One of the more devastating implications of the tragedy was the toll it took on Ray's identity. For someone whose career was anchored in nurturing, feeding, comforting, providing, it's jarring to be the one in need of those things. It shifts the entire balance of how one sees oneself. When the house burned down, it wasn't just the physical space that was lost. It was a blow to her role as a giver, a caretaker. Suddenly, the woman who was always ready with a tip, a recipe, a warm word, had to find strength in her own reservoirs, many of which had been depleted by years of constant output. That shift, being vulnerable in a world that expected her to be strong, created an emotional fracture not easily repaired. And then there was the silence between the moments. The countless hours when the cameras were off, when the spotlight dimmed, and the reality of what had been lost became too large to ignore. It's in those moments that the weight of tragedy is most crushing. Not when others are watching, but when they've moved on and you're left in the debris. Ray, who had spent years in front of audiences, now found herself performing a different kind of endurance. The quiet survival of grief. The ability to keep going not because it felt good, but because it was the only option. The tragedy also revealed the stark loneliness that can accompany fame. Surrounded by millions of admirers, supported by teams and networks, Ray still found herself isolated in her pain. The nature of celebrity often means that people assume you're equipped for anything, that wealth and status are shields against suffering. But tragedy does not discriminate. The fire didn't care that she was a TV star. The virus didn't bypass her because she had a platform. And emotional wounds don't heal faster because you have a fan base. In fact, the pressure to appear okay often delays the healing. That duality, the public's need for her presence and her private need to retreat, created a tension that hung in the air long after the flames had died down. The implications of this tragedy stretched beyond Ray's own life. It served as a stark reminder that no matter how carefully one crafts a life, no matter how much love and labor goes into building a home or a persona, it can all be taken in an instant. It also exposed the fragility of the parasocial relationships that define modern media. Viewers feel close to personalities like Ray, but their access is one-directional. They know her laugh, her quirks, her habits, but they don't know her silence, her breakdowns, her sleepless nights. When tragedy enters that space, it shatters the illusion of simplicity. Suddenly, the relationship becomes more complex, tinged with empathy, but also helplessness. There's a collective grief, but no collective solution. For Ray, continuing to create after such loss was both an act of defiance and a necessity. She rebuilt, not just physically, but spiritually, because there was no alternative. But that rebuilding wasn't triumphant or immediate. It was slow, painful, and at times filled with doubt. Each step forward came with the memory of what had been, and every dish cooked in a new kitchen echoed the sounds of the old one. Her tragedy lingered in the background of every smile, every segment, a quiet reminder of resilience that doesn't always look like strength. The emotional cost of what happened to Rachael Ray can't be measured in ratings or social media posts. It's etched in the way she moves, the way she speaks about home, the way she looks at the places that were once so familiar and are now irreparably altered. The tragedy didn't define her, but it changed her. And that change is permanent. What she endured wasn't just the loss of a house, but the rupture of safety, of identity, and of normalcy. And while she returned to screens and resumed her work, there was always something missing, something you could feel if you knew to look for it. That is the heartbreak. Not the fire itself, not even the lost possessions, but the invisible toll of trying to carry on when so much of the past has turned to ash. Rachael Ray became a symbol not just of perseverance, but of the complexity of healing. How it doesn't follow a script or timeline, and how it often looks nothing like we expect. For her fans, the tragedy was a painful moment of realization that even those who give us joy are not immune from sorrow, and that the people we lean on are sometimes the ones who need support the most. Through it all, the unspoken pain of being watched while suffering remained one of the most harrowing parts of the ordeal. To grieve in public is to constantly negotiate between honesty and protection, vulnerability and performance. Ray walked that line with a quiet grace, but it came at a cost. There were days when her voice trembled, when her eyes betrayed the turmoil beneath the surface, when even the act of cooking seemed like a struggle against despair. The fact that she kept showing up wasn't a return to normal. It was a daily act of emotional labor. The heartbreaking nature of what happened to Rachael Ray also lies in how universal the themes were. Loss, displacement, fear. These are not the experiences of a celebrity, they are the experiences of a human being. Yet for her, those universal pains played out on a stage that allowed no real privacy. The cameras might have turned off, but the narrative didn't. People speculated, commented, analyzed, all while she tried to make sense of the wreckage that once was her life. The emotional exhaustion that comes from constantly being observed, even in pain, added another layer to the tragedy, one that is often ignored in public discourse. As the tragedy unfolded, the image of the cheerful, unstoppable Rachael Ray took on a different hue. It didn't vanish, but it evolved. Viewers began to see not just the personality, but the person. And in that shift, something powerful emerged. Not redemption, not resolution, but recognition. Recognition that even the most vibrant among us can fall. That behind every smile might be a shadow. That heartbreak, when it arrives, doesn't wait for a convenient time or a private place. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Rachael Ray's tragedy? What do you expect happened? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.